The meeting will be recorded. It's obviously not going to be online, but it's going to be recorded and that will be posted later on. Just to advise anybody in the public gallery, they are very welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any of the meeting. So apologies. I have apologies from Alan Chambers, Noel McAllister, Diane Dodds and Linda Dillon. Are members aware of any other apologies? None? Okay. Chair's business, there's none this week?
Can't do the minutes.
Okay. So we'll just leave the minutes. So there's obviously no matters arising now. So just moving on to item number 5, which is a briefing from the Fire and Rescue Service general overview. So can I thank the staff of the Fire and Rescue Service for hosting today's meeting and for providing a brilliant, incredibly insightful tour of the training facility. It was absolutely wonderful. The facilities you have now at your disposal in terms of training your staff are magnificent. And we obviously get very good weather to see around it, which also helps. So it is an example of best practice for all fire service departments throughout the world and something you should be incredibly proud of. So the committee would also like to put on record our sincere gratitude to all your staff for their selfless dedication in dealing with the recent spate of wildfires. So we mentioned that last week. We're obviously here today, and we're obviously here on a day when there's another wildfire taking place in Clogher. So, I mean, on the way down, I heard the news about the 60 fire staff, cross-border staff dealing with the fire. So, again, I mean, we want to put a record whilst we're here for the important work you do, not just dealing with wildfires because that's in the news at the minute, but all the incredible work that your service does, keeping people safe and protecting people and rescuing people. So can I refer members, just moving on to tab 5 of our table papers. So there's a copy of the Community Risk Management Plan for 25 to 30. That's included at page 2 of our table papers, and there's also a briefing paper on the Development College, and that's included at page 45 of the table paper. So welcome to the meeting. We have Aidan Jennings, Chief Fire and Rescue Officer, Paul Harper, Deputy Chief Fire and Rescue Officer, and Paula White, Director of Finance and Support Services. So thank you very much for facilitating today's meeting. And I mean, essentially, I'm just going to hand over to yourselves, give us a briefing, and then we'll take questions from members after that.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to come along and meet the Health Committee. And you're very, very welcome on our Fire and Rescue Service and our new Development College. And we've had the opportunity to have a chat, as you saw, at the facility today. What I'd like to do first of all, is just acknowledge that appreciation you've demonstrated for our staff and for that period of wildfire over the last number of weeks, and again in recognition of that fire which is going on today. And hopefully at the end here we'll give a bit of an update of where that is for members, because I know you will have an interest in that. There's a lot I could say and I could talk at length, but I know that's not the purpose of today. We invite the questions and want to speak with you. However, we do want to show a bit of a video, around 3 minutes just before that, if members could attract their attention. It's a video that we put out shortly after I took post, and it just brings a focus and attention to the breadth and width of the organisation, the statutory duty that we hold, and the value of all of our people, operational firefighters and the on-call and the whole time. And I know we'll talk a little bit structure there, but as well, and most especially our support staff colleagues, because none of this works, and you've seen a lot of it today, unless it all works together. So just attract attention, if we could, to the screen behind and let members view that. It's only a few minutes. Thank you, Ronnie.
We are one team. We are safer together.
We answer your emergency call and get you the help you need as fast as possible.
We are there when you need us most.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
We make sure that our people are fully trained and developed to keep our community safe.
We are especially trained to rescue people difficult and complicated situations.
We provide free home fire safety checks and advise our community on how to stay safe.
We plan to make sure we have the right resources in the right place at the right time.
We enforce our fire safety legislation to keep the public safe from fire in premises across Northern Ireland. We look after our fleet of over 400 vehicles, so our firefighters can make those vehicles.
We ensure everyone is paid on time for the work they do.
We deliver major capital projects that transform our estates and facilities.
We ensure our fire stations and buildings are safe places to work.
We support our team by setting up training exercises for our firefighters and repair and maintenance to our fire stations.
We support the day-to-day running of our IT systems and are working towards modernising our IT infrastructure.
We have a best point of contact for all levels of management that can involve professional HR advice on employee matters, policies and procedures.
We look after the health and well-being of all of our people.
We recruit and select the best people to deliver our services to help keep people safe. We collect and analyse data to monitor community risk and NIFRS performance. This informs how we can make continuous improvements to our service. We monitor, analyse and audit our processes to ensure we are continually performing and improving.
We develop operational kits and training materials for our firefighters so they can manage incidents effectively and safely.
We welcome visitors to NIFRS headquarters. We are the first point of contact for any non-emergency telephone calls or queries.
We are one team. Together, we are Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service. We are safer together.
Very good.
Thank you, Ronnie. Chair, Committee, I think that sets a context in a number of minutes which would take extensive conversation to cover the breadth of. So I just thought that was useful to show today at the start of today's meeting. The other area I want to recognise then is that piece around our people as I start to work through. Our people are amazing in operational roles, in support roles, in our control room, and we saw it again recently in that period of wildfire. We as an executive team, we see it every day. The public see it when those calls come in, and we know we have that incident ongoing in Clocker today that I've mentioned before. And that speaks to our purpose. And for me, our purpose is very, very clearly defined. And it's that every time, and without fail, no matter what time of the day or night, no matter what the weather conditions, when someone lifts the phone and rings 999 and someone in our control room answers the call and says, "Hello, Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service," that very quickly we hit the buttons, we're alerting our station, we're alerting our own call, and we're turning out. And we're going out there to have our best day because someone's having their worst. And that's our focus. As an executive team, we're here to enable that. We're here in service to our crews to make sure they have everything they need. And we work hard and tirelessly every day to make sure that's the case, because the best of our people, no matter what their role, are out there trying to affect community outcomes. Our organisation then, we've 67 fire stations. You'll have seen some of it on the board in the control room on the diagram. We have 113 frontline pumping appliances, but many other specialist capability vehicles. And I know that you saw some of those out on the site today, from urban search and rescue, high-volume pumps, aerial ladder platforms. So there's a range of vehicles to deliver skill sets and capabilities. We've 7 whole-time stations, so those are stations that firefighters are on, permanently crewed by full-time firefighters 24/7. We've 10 that are a mix of whole-time and on-call, and we have 50 that are purely on-call. And on-call means that firefighters respond from their primary employment, from their home, from their place of work, when a call comes in, they make their way to the fire station, they dress in their personal protective equipment, their PPE, and they respond to a call within their community, or indeed across Northern Ireland, days like today when we're at the incident clocker. They provide so much to us, and I can't emphasise enough how important they are to our service, and to their families, and to their primary employers. We couldn't deliver the fire and rescue service without them. They're really important. Annually, we're receiving around 35,000 calls, and that's actually an increase of 7% on previous year. That's around 42,000 actual mobilisations, because fires are often not single pump mobilisations. In fact, they're 2, 3, and in the case of today, and Deputy Chief Fire Officer Paul Harper gave an update on that. There's actually 15 pumping appliances in Clocker at the minute. Our control room's dealing with around 250,000 calls a day, or a year, sorry, not a day, a year, in terms of calls from our stations, phone calls in, crewing arrangements, and then they're taking around 2,200 radio messages a day as well. Some of those electronic into the system, some of them voice. So a really busy control room for us. Our community risk management plan, which is one of the papers we've referred to in the pack today, it sets out the detail of who we are as a service, and if members have had the opportunity to read through that, it tells you about the work we carry out and the steps we take to respond, and it gives you that direction to travel over the next 5 years. It's our strategic plan, it's where we're going, it's how we are ensuring that we're remaining strong and resilient and delivering for communities. And critically, it's based on data, and it works to a strategic assessment of risk, and across Northern Ireland it will identify that risk for us and ensure that our response model and our service delivery model delivers. It's going to look at a range of areas around emergency response standards, prevention methodologies, how we deliver our service with digital and data strategies, our learning development college, a people strategy to look after our teams, as well as implementing career pathways, and you've seen some of that here today as well. If I could touch then briefly on that period that you've referenced, Chair, 3rd of April to 13th of April, and that's the space in which we received 2,762 calls to that regional control centre in 10 days. Just short, one less than 1,500 of these we mobilised to, because we call challenge, we don't go to everything. We will challenge and we will not respond always. And again, some are repeat calls, so that's the space between the number received and the number mobilised to. 390 of them in 10 days were gorse fires. An extremely busy period, and you'll know them, I won't list, certainly not all of them, but the larger ones in Hilltown, that one in particular was declared as a major incident for us, and we don't declare major incident very often, and again that has been considered to be. Our Learn Development College today, again the briefing paper has been provided, some of the members have been able to facilitate the tour, but there's a piece there around the background of where that's come from, how we delivered the project, the college as you see delivered today, but there's so much more still to do here, the challenges and opportunities which maintain and the work we need to do, and then the next steps for us taking us forward as a service through the college. We may wish to touch as well on our HMI report and the actions that came from that. I'm sure members may have seen that in the past, but we had a HMI report in 2022, and we're working really hard against those actions to deliver and input in that space. And then the space of emergency medical response and cardiac arrest, the Maggie's Call initiative, which again we'd be happy to brief around background on. And there's a lot going on with that as well. We've one station still delivering emergency medical response, and no colleagues in IAS are in behind us today. So happy to take questions around that as well. The final piece I want to talk about as a service is, in almost 30 years for myself and Paul as operational officers, we joined together. We've never responded alone. We don't go alone. Firefighters and fire service don't go out to deal with fires even alone. We go with our colleagues in blue light organisations. We go with the police service, we go with the ambulance service, we work with the statutory bodies and council, we work with the civil contingencies arrangements, and we're an embedded and important part of that. But equally our colleagues in those other services, it really is a joint up approach. And that's in the response world. Equally then in the world of prevention and protection, the built environment, in preventing fires happening, working with our colleagues in health, in the trusts, with vulnerable people. We know now what the profile of the next people to be injured or lose their lives in fire will be, and it's why that collaboration piece in the prevention world is so important to us, because it allows us to reach those vulnerable people, people who are dependent at home, people who don't have the mobility, and that's a huge piece for us in delivering home fire safety checks and working with children and young people to prevent fires happening in the first place, because we would much prefer that we weren't in the space of response, that we were in the space of prevention. and that's where we see the service moving to, more importantly, in the future. Community risk management plan, and there's a lot in all of that I've said. Community risk management plan sets out our plan to work across that over the next 5 years. In summary then, I guess, and I'm trying to keep this to the 10 minutes to allow questions to commence. In summary, I guess, we're a service that's delivering very effectively, but we're not without our challenges. We're not without our challenges. We are a part of health, and we're very conscious of our part and the important part we are in that space. But we are in difficult times, and we're part of those difficult times. So revenue budget, capital budget, maintaining our fleet, maintaining our people, all of those challenges are there, and we work tirelessly and in partnership with our Department of Health, and have a really good relationship in moving that forward. And we welcome the opportunity today to answer any questions that the Health Committee would have around any of that we've covered, or indeed anything else that you may wish to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, would you like a bit of an update on today from Deputy Chief Forester?
Go ahead.
So you would have heard probably the update that was given perhaps at lunchtime there, committee. So we have an ongoing incident, a significant incident in Clocker, which has 15 pumping appliances, a number of support vehicles, and approximately 100 firefighters at that incident. The incident's broken down into 3 sectors, and we're working cross-border with Monaghan, who are also having in the same area some issues with fire there. I'm just come from the command room, and we had an update from the incident commander. It is a very challenging terrain and environment which they're working in. It is a very fierce fire, but look, they're working hard, tirelessly, and as the Chief has said, the majority of the staff there's a mix between our whole time and our own call, but they have dropped everything from their homes and their primary employment to get down and up the mountain, and they're working fiercely in today's environment to try and bring that fire under control. So at the moment we are providing our normal service delivery across the province, but it is a significant demand on our resources today. We suspect that this will continue throughout today, and we are entering now a few days of higher risk environmental conditions for wildfire right through to Monday morning. So some of our contingency planning is now stretched out from actually started yesterday right through to Monday morning, working with, as you've said, our partner agencies and that wraparound support that local councils and civil contingencies, voluntary sector are geared up to work with this should we need them. And indeed, as the Chief also said, there is a key element of what is happening on the ground. It is not us by ourselves. We're working, the police are there, the ambulance are supporting us if required, but primarily we have support from other civil contingency groups and those voluntary groups who are a great source of help for us on the ground and supporting our firefighters as they need it throughout the day. So I'm happy to take any questions on that, but it is an ongoing incident, as you'd imagine.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm just thinking when you talk about the period between now and Monday, the rest of us look forward to good weather, looking forward to the heat, but the fire service probably approach periods of weather like this with a bit of trepidation just in terms of what could happen. So I was going to ask about, I've mentioned just putting record how grateful we are for the service, how for the bravery and dedication the fire service shows on issues like this, and the impact that it probably has on yourselves but also on our environment, particularly when you consider some of these fires are maybe started deliberately. So if you have just a wee bit more detail in terms of talking through the impact that not just today's in Clocker but the gorse fires that we have seen in recent times put on your resources, it obviously stretches your service, maybe impacts things that you can or can't do elsewhere with it in the community and the knock-on effect that it has. And also, what is there possible that we can do more to educate the public in relation to these, given that a lot of these are either started accidentally or deliberately?
Okay, thank you. I'll take that question, and Paul will probably come in behind me around some of the final parts of the question. You're absolutely right, Chair. This has a huge impact on our resources. Those call statistics that I shared at the start, we have 67 fire stations, we have 113 pumping appliances, and they're not all available at all times, all day, every day. That on-call model can be challenged for us. So when we get to the place of large numbers of incidents like this out, we do have firefighters on the mountain in Clogher. Many of those happen simultaneously in that period of the 10 days at the start of April. And this impacts our availability on stations across Northern Ireland. So once we start sending out 10, 12, 15 pumps on any incident or multiple incidents ongoing, well then there aren't 113 available anymore. And when you add to those that may not be available today for a range of reasons around crewing, very quickly that reduction has an impact on service delivery. So that might be to a road traffic collision, it might be to a house fire, it might be to a water rescue or collapsed structure, it might be something to do with flooding. Now, unlikely in the world of wildfire and flooding at the same time, but I have seen that on the same day here in Northern Ireland. So all of that impacts our ability to respond. And we don't want to be responding, we want to be preventing, and we work really hard at that, and that message is key. But we're there to deliver a service to the public, and we believe, and I'm happy to say as Chief Officer, when we're standing in the mountain of gorse fires, we're delivering a part of that, and it's an important part we do, but it puts at risk the safety of the community. So we draw that appeal and do continually. Our Head of Strategic Communications is here today. Our messaging is continually clear. This needs to stop. These fires need to stop. We are working really hard with colleagues and partners in government, in DERA, with our own Minister, with the Northern Environment Agency around the strategic way forward and talking about that. The deputies directly involved with NIEA on that piece of work. We work very closely with NEI as well in response, in specific and vehicles there to challenge that. They don't start accidentally, or a small number of them do. So there is definitely antisocial behaviour here. There's arson at play, and we've got to, as a society, address that. We as a fire service won't tire in trying to stop these happening. And that's not just in the wildfire world. That's in all of those calls, attacks on firefighters, that whole space around prevention and calls which waste valuable resources are key for us. We want our fire stations to be available, our firefighters to be on our stations or out in the community delivering prevention. We don't want them out of calls that should not have been started or should not be occurred in the first place. That just creates too great a risk.
Okay. I think just to follow on from that, you asked what can be done to stop that, and I'll maybe just talk a little bit. And I did meet with the Chief Executive of the Environment Agency last week, but this isn't a DERA problem or a health problem or an education problem. It's a whole societal problem that we need to solve collectively, and resourcing the fire service up to have more equipment when we have more fires is not the answer. And as Chief has said, we need to get into a place where behaviour changes, whether that is poor behaviour where people are neglectful of their duty and responsibility in the wildland, whereby they are discarding cigarettes carelessly, or whether they're having a barbecue carelessly in that environment, or indeed, I think there is work to do around enforcement of the regulations and prosecution where necessary. So it's really a cross-departmental approach that I think we need here in Northern Ireland to build a capability. And when I say a capability, it's not a response capability, it's a capability that we have across education, enforcement, prosecution, and indeed, when all that fails, of course we will respond as we are today and we have in the past. But this is not unique here in Northern Ireland. The increase in wildfire due to climate change, we're seeing it conversely in flooding, but specifically around wildfire, it's exactly the same across the Republic of Ireland and the rest of GB. The NFCC, the National Fire Chiefs Council, have been very proactive in looking at a position statement, and we contribute to that around where we see this political and financial support to enable society to move forward to mitigate against these wildfires. And we have a key part to play in that, and we will lean very heavily into it, but we can't do it alone. We need that political and financial support here across the departments to really give us traction to stop the wildfires happening in the first place.
Okay, thank you. That actually has been very useful, and probably leads slightly into my next question. So, I mean, our committee has a wide remit, as there's a wide remit within health, so we're engaging with a lot of sectors of health. One of the issues that comes up all the time, resources is one, workforce issues is another. So, I mean, the fire and rescue service obviously have particular demands on your workforce, and that's clear for us all to see. So, perhaps, I mean, Aidan, you talked about the challenges just briefly. You didn't get into a lot of detail. It might be useful just to spend a wee bit of time discussing if workforce is a challenge, an issue, and maybe talking through your workforce strategy and how robust it is in terms of contingency planning, because obviously if there's workforce issues within the fire and rescue service, that's a major impact on the public. So I'm just going to give you a bit of time if you want to develop that issue and any of the other issues that you talked about.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Our workforce is divided. Really, there are 4 key areas. I've talked very briefly earlier about the number of stations and the pumps, but we provide that crew and resource through either full-time firefighters, whole-time we refer to them as, on-call firefighters, and I've talked about that at 50 stations, and a further 10 which are split with second pumps with on-call and whole-time mix. Our control room, and then our support staff. And I've listed them from whole-time down to support staff, but I don't view them in any way in an order or a hierarchy. Every one of them plays their part, as I hope you've seen today in the one-team video that we demonstrated. And none of our organisation will work unless it all works together. Firefighters will be out there responding, but they will be supported today and have been across all of my years in service by all of those people behind the scenes to deliver for our organisation. It really is a whole team effort to deliver what we need. Do we have enough people? No. Would we like more people? Yes, we absolutely would. What does that model look like? Well, we're currently trying to bring some stability to the organisation over what's been a number of difficult years. We have, without doubt, over I would say more than a decade now, worked really hard to protect the front line in the space of response. And we've taken posts out of operational day duty roles. Because equally, not all of our firefighters are out there on the front line or on a station responding. For example, you'll see here today in this venue, trainers, and those are operational trainers, and they need to be and they must be. But equally, they're a blend of Green Book support staff trainers delivering specific things like driver training, where that works. We have a protection function in the built environment where we deliver against legislation. We've elements of our order in our fire safety regulation of 2010. In that word, we have a very small team there out delivering against what's almost 70,000 relevant premises under our order inspecting there. That's a team of 28, and that equally has been impacted over the years in terms of delivering our statutory duty in the built environment. In the on-call world, we'd have an establishment of 994 on-call firefighters. We're currently operating at 813. So you can see the difference there. Now, that's not all about revenue. That's not all about the challenges that face. Because we are challenged with recruitment. We're challenged with attracting people to on-call work. They live and work within 5 minutes. But we're working really hard. So what are we doing to address that? Well, we currently have, and I know committee members have met some of the trainees here today. So there are 34 new trainees in the training school today. We're expecting 24 more at the start of August. We're expecting 24 more at the start of September. And we're currently looking at the profile for next year. So we have a whole-time list with around 100 people still on that list. And we would expect that we'll exhaust that list next year and we'll be coming out again, hopefully shortly, just into the new year, to go again to start to advertise. Because attrition, people reach the end of their career, they retire, so we've got to keep that coming through. In the on-call world, equally, we had an intake here in early March, another intake in April, and we're out at the minute in 43 of those stations where we have on-call, with recruitment processes running to attract people, to bring them in, to take them through the relevant assessments, fitness tests, etc., to get them to the point of starting their career with us in Fire and Rescue Service. So we're working really hard to recruit and resource the organisation. So whilst we are challenged in the revenue space, it's not all about give us more money and we can fix that problem, and that's not what I would say. Equally in the support staff space, the world has changed. Not everything should be done on paper anymore. We still operate with systems that are aged, and we've work to do there. So we are heavily reliant in some older, not in the space of technological advancement that I would like us to be in. So we have a challenge there with digital and data to help enable us as an organisation to go forward. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit more as well. But we have recognised and done a piece of work with the Department off the back of that inspector report that I talked about earlier, delivered in September 2022, that we're in the region of, we believe, around 70 support staff posts short of where we should be. And those posts are in a range of places: programme management, speak to some of the need that's there, risk data and data management, a range of posts across our organisation, including those who work in the training school. That for me is taking us to a place that we set out in the community risk management plan. So where we want to get to. That world where we deliver an effective and efficient service to the public, where we do so and respond based on data and risk. You've got to gather that data, you've got to analyse that data, you've got to work through that, you've got to present that to your stations. In an ideal world, we want our stations to understand the risks specifically in their areas. We want our firefighters to be trained specifically in those risks. We talked earlier today around coma sites and lower tiers. We talked about some of the risks in specific station areas. Our firefighters need to understand those risks in their areas. We talked about the harbours. We talked about the airports. Firefighters need to be specifically trained and educated in the risks that they will turn out to, but not everywhere is the same. So, yes, we're challenged with resourcing in terms of people, and we know we've work to do, but we are on with it. There is a plan. We are engaged with our sponsor body, and we are engaged with the Department of Health. We have a paper with the department, and I'm confident that we're working through that. It's not a plan that we could fix tomorrow. When I talk to you about hold time and on-call and resourcing of that, those are substantive and ongoing cyclical exercises. And again, in our resourcing team, we wouldn't have the capacity to continue to run new and more. So we accept, not that we accept the position we're in, we understand is better the position we're in. And we're working closely with the department to deliver against that resourcing challenge we face. I would invite either of my colleagues if there's anything they want to add to that, because I know both have been heavily involved in our paper and development of our paper that have gone to the department.
Paula? I think, I would point back to the CRMP, and it's an ambitious 5-year plan that we believe is not insurmountable, but it does require some we believe some support financially to put us into a position of stability. Because I think we've come through a period of instability, and as the Chief has said, a number of years where we've seen that sort of real-time funding decrease within the service, and that the workings of that been outlined in some of the resource challenges. So we need to get to a point of stability, and we've outlined that within, and that's what our CRMP effectively is. How do we stabilise before we start to really reform and transform into a much more effective service? And the resourcing challenges that Aidan outlines in our whole time on call and support is where we feel we'll get the benefit to be able to transform our service. But we need to get to a point where stability. And that's why the CRMP is so important to us. It encompasses those recommendations by the independent inspector, who has outlined the same and continued approach to stability model across those areas that we have identified, and allow us to transform. And I think we are in a position where we are very positive as an executive team that we know where we need to go. Like the inspector said, none of these issues that we're identifying are insurmountable without some financial and some political support.
So I think what I would like to do, though, is recognise the Department of Health recognises our challenges. We're not sitting as an island, and they do help us as much as they can within the financial constraints that they're working with. But we are wholly reliant, as is across the public sector, on in-year non-recurrent funding every year. So that makes planning incredibly challenging, especially in a period of annualised budgeting. And digital is a big part of the solution, but it is not the only solution. And it also, when we look into the future, it's how do we plan for the new and emergent trends that are coming towards us as an organisation. So the significant increase in electric vehicles, for example, the risks that come with that. So there is a lot of new and emergent as society moves on that impacts us, but you won't know until a number of years down the line exactly what that impact looks like. So it's really difficult to plan what your resources should look like in the future when you know the challenges that are coming towards you. I mean, our budget is not small. Our opening position this year is 106 million. But like all organisations, 80% of it is going on our people. And we're having to build our budget to a break-even position each year based on actual headcount, which is why we're really struggling without additional recurrent funding to get to the stability position that we're in, because we can't recruit what we can't pay for. But like I say, we're not alone, and we recognise we're not alone, and the department does support us, but it also has limited resources, and it's got a big health service that it's trying to manage as well.
So and year budgets is something we'll hear from everybody, and it's a recognisable problem. We're hopefully moving to a point where we can have multi-year budgets, so that again should conversely help everybody, including yourself. So 106 million is the opening budget.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could put a figure on what you think you need to reach the point of stabilisation, what would that be?
So every year our financial planning indicates that we're between 10 and 15 million pounds short. That would get us to the position of stability, plus fund a lot of decisions that we have to take each year that impact us operationally and create risk in terms of break-even. So it's not a large amount in the wide terms, but it's a big amount in terms of what the Department of Health is trying to manage as well. So we're short between about 10 and 15%.
And there's conversations ongoing with the department to try and address that issue.
There are, absolutely. And look, we do work very closely, and they are very supportive of that. As Paula has said, we work in that space of non-recurrent funding in multiple years to support that. So where they can, they're absolutely helping us and working out. We've signed that partnership agreement with the Department of Health just over a year ago now, and we're seeing that starting to come to bear, and we're working really clearly with them. It is a challenge, but we recognise our space in health. We recognise the economics of Northern Ireland PLC, and we work really hard and manage those risks that creates in an ideal world, but we're not in an ideal world, and we recognise that.
I mean, I've been lucky enough, been here early, got the tour, asked lots of questions. It's very interesting, so I could literally talk about this with you all day to find out stuff. But my last question before I hand over to the other members, so this is a really magnificent state-of-the-art facility that you have. So you've been very enthusiastic in the last hour about the facility, about the role that it has. I mean, the enthusiasm and the pride in the work that's ongoing here, the fact that, I mean, you've said a couple of times that the firefighters coming after you will be much better trained and capable of doing things that currently aren't possible, so that's very positive for the public at large. What potential is there in this site in terms of utilising it beyond just the fire service, training hub across the island, across other services? And, is it a potential source of income for the fire service?
The potential of this site, for me, is not yet even fully recognised. This has been a project, and there's a couple of things in this, and they're in the briefing paper provided to members, but I'll tease a number of them out. The background of this site was as a tri-service college. This is not a tri-service college. So I need to be clear about that. The original site was around 220 acres, 224 acres. The site that we have here today is less than a third of that. So it's not the tri-service college, and therefore it can't deliver all that the tri-service college would have delivered. So having said that, there were objectives within the business case to work closely and work in collaboration and work with other agencies. And it's in that space that I see the largest opportunity for this site. Firefighters who come behind us will absolutely be better than we have been because of this site and because of the opportunities it presents for them. You've seen some of that today. We did not have those facilities, but it's fair to say also that we probably had a busier operational environment. We came through more difficult days. We saw more in the operational world. And it's a wonderful thing and a wonderful indictment in society in Northern Ireland that we don't have that anymore. But we've got to find something to ensure that our firefighters are exposed to the real risks that they face. And what we have on this site now is a venue that creates safe, repeatable, scenario-based training in order that firefighters are exposed to those risks that they will face on their worst days. So when someone's making that call and having their worst days, our people are ready and prepared to go out there with knowledge and awareness of the risks they face in the organisation, in the community, and the skill sets to address those. And you've seen some of that today in what you've seen. The opportunities beyond fire only then, and I'm really clear about this as both Chief Fire Officer and SRO of this project over the last number of years, the opportunities are huge. This very room that we sit in, I don't think there's ever an opportunity we could have hosted the Health Committee in any of our facility or estate before that. This wouldn't have happened today. We've already run a number of conferences external to the organisation here that have been all-island, fire investigation, etc. Chief Executives Forum have been here. We've held our Long Service Good Conduct Award ceremonies here. We've a number of middle management conferences planned later this year as we've done some work and review of our structures. We want to bring those new incoming post middle managers down so that we're communicating effectively with them. But equally outside of the bricks and mortar academic building you sit in, it's out there on the fireground scenarios that the real opportunity exists. So we are today, and Paul, Deputy Chief Officer Harper, has covered that, engaged in a cross-border emergency response with 15 pumps and multiple resources from ourselves, but equally fire service from the south, Monaghan firefighters at the same incident, working together. So we need to test and exercise and work together because it's too late when you go out there. You don't respond alone, you respond together. You've got to test that. We've got to understand different procedures, how people work, because you can't do that at point of arriving at the incident. Partner agencies, and I've talked over the last number of years around partners of choice, because this site can't be all things to all people. And partners of choice for me are those who we respond to very clearly. So Ambulance Service have already signed up with a memorandum of understanding. We've taken the photographs outside a number of weeks ago. They joined us from very early January. They've taken a number of people through, and we were working with them before we came here very closely. We worked very closely with our colleagues in ambulance. So they've taken a number of their cohorts and trainees through as well. And it's a wonderful thing to see when you drive up that avenue and look to the left and see the car park and see our cars, emergency response vehicles from fire, emergency response vehicles from the PSNI, emergency response from Coast Guard, and ambulance service vehicles as well. We do not respond together, we respond together. Why would we ever train alone? So the right thing to do is to use this asset, use this site for everything that it can deliver to make not just firefighters but all those emergency responders better, to ensure that we get to a place of a much better outcome for citizens in Northern Ireland. There's a lot going on around what the site provides, the facilities and assets that are here, and I would say that that resourcing question, that challenge as well. We have built a flagship programme for government executive facility. It's a wonderful facility, but we're not without challenge in running it either. We're only getting started. There's so much to do with resourcing. I know the area commander for training is or was in behind me. I'm not sure. I think he's away. Now he's something else to go to. But he would tell me, and he's right, he needs trainers. He needs more trainers. Fire service training is changing across the UK and across the world. Emergent risks and emergent technologies, wildfire, climate change, lithium-ion batteries, risks that firefighters are exposed to, national operational guidance, UK fire standards. All of those things are growing and developing the standard to which training is delivered, and we need to be able to take that finite resource, put it in the right place, and make sure we're giving our firefighters all of the training, all of the education that they need, because it is an inherently dangerous job. And I and my colleagues in the executive team and across the organisation at all layers of leadership and management need to do everything to ensure the safety of our firefighters, and that's absolutely critical. And I think that passion you've talked about that you saw out there today, and that which I hope is coming across from the executive team here, means that we'll never tire of doing that. It's the right thing to do, and we want to look after our firefighters and all of those emergency responders who come. The opportunities for this site, I don't think, have yet been fully realised, and there's much work to do.
Thank you. Just before I bring Alan in, can I ask members just to move your phones away from the microphones? It's causing a bit of interference. Alan?
And I suppose it's following on the theme from the chair of financial stability and some of the comments that you made yourself in terms of financial stability. And I suppose the blue light services has been well documented for some years now of the pressures that they've faced. Yep. Police and ambulance service and the Northern Fire Service have flown under the radar a little in terms of media coverage with regards to the financial pressures that you have. And I suppose it leads on to some of the comments within the management plan where you talk about 32% of your estate is over 50 years old. And when we look at a number of organisations that have been, their hand have been forced, we look at the police having to consolidate under one site over a geographical area. We look at councils, we look at DFI roads. Do you envisage a time, given that you have, did I read 67 fire stations? Mm-hmm. Do you envisage a time in which, if there is no financial stability, that your hand may too be forced and we may see fire stations close in some of our towns or villages?
Thank you. Yes, that remains as a challenge for us, and I guess I would point back again to our community risk management plan. And our community risk management plan takes us to that place whereby, based on data, based on risk, we will look at a review of our operation response model. We will look at where our stations are located. We accept that the public will look for that facility in whichever area of the public sector is as close to they as they can get it. But we are currently prioritised around our model around multi-pump whole time on call, 2-pump on call and single pump on call stations based on areas of risk. What we're proposing under the community risk management plan is that entire strategic assessment of risk across Northern Ireland, with layer upon layer of risk built up to identify where do we need to be, what's the right model in those locations, and what does that response look like. So what we don't want to do is get to a place where we be in any way arbitrarily closing stations without a fully informed picture, and that's what the community risk management plan, it's a part of. It's not entirely so much in the plan, but that's a part of the plan as well, where we look at our service delivery model. You make a very good point around the data in the plan around our stations and their condition. Yes, so many are more than 50 years old. But again, working very closely with our sponsor department through our capital allocation, which is £7 million each year, we have over the last number of years. I think this year we'll bring Paula in. Paula leads facilities and assets, but in this year we're about to reach the 20th station that we have completed refurbishment on, and there's so much in that for us because those stations at 50 years old need work, need investment, and we've a lot more to do out there, and we've some fire stations that are little more than a garage for the fire plants and are in very, very poor condition. We've also so much to do for the health and well-being and safety of our firefighters on those stations. The occupation of firefighting in recent years has been classified by the World Health Organization as an at-risk occupation in relation to working with carcinogens and soot and smoke. So those contaminants are an issue for us. And again, we're working across our stations to refurbish there, cleaning dirty areas, not bringing kit back to the station, washing kit, laundering kit, taking that kit away. All of that comes at cost. All of that looks to us to provide that leadership to ensure we're using those scarce resources and scarce funding to look after the health and well-being of our firefighters, who are there to look after the health and well-being of the community. And we must put them first in our considerations. Even this site and the carbonaceous burn units in this site, no firefighter comes here with their PPE and goes away with that PPE. That PPE is taken from them, it's bagged up, it's taken away, it's laundered, and it makes its way back to the station, so they go back to the station with clean kit. So all of those things, those issues are issues that continue to drive costs, and in some places new costs that might not have been seen in the past, and we take that very seriously. It probably used to be a badge of honour to be dirty and have a dirty face and be covered in soot, and that's so wrong in terms of the culture. Clean, washed, clean kit, showered, not taking it home to families, not taking it back to the station, not taking it out to education visits to schools, because you're polluting and taking all of that, and actually it impacts the health and well-being of our firefighters. So yes, revenue in that space and capital is always very welcome, but again, we recognise the environment and space in which we work, and we work very hard to ensure we're prioritising those scarce resources across all of those range of pressures that we have. Paula, is there anything you'd want to add maybe around the estate?
So the team have worked really hard in the last number of years, and while the backlog appears to have grown in terms of value, in terms of preventing it growing even further, those 20 refurbishments, and some of them have been really significant, almost a rebuild of a station, has really impacted on the growth of that, slowed it quite significantly. We do only get 7 million. It hasn't gone up from I started in 2018, so in real terms it's significantly reduced, particularly when we appreciate the cost of construction in the last 3 or 4 years and how that has astronomically increased. And we're having to take a really careful balance between that 7 million has to spread between our operational equipment, our fleet, our digital and our estate. So it has a long way to stretch, and each year we're sitting, and again, we are fortunate that while it's annualised capital budget, we are pretty much guaranteed our 7 million each year, so it does enable us to plan, and it is supplemented each year by varying amounts for backlogs, specifically to address the backlog in the estates piece. So again, we absorb that and try and take a holistic approach to how we're utilising that funding rather than doing lots of smaller projects. How do we bring it in as a whole and make it work most efficiently and effectively for us? But costs across the board are significantly increasing, so we're getting less and less for our money. And one of the big issues that we will face in the next number of years is our digital strategy, in that, as with across health has been recognised, there's a digital deficit. So we have a lot of new systems that are planned, and they will need to be funded. And to fund those, we have to stop something in our estates or in our fleet. The department has been incredibly supportive in 2 particular areas where we have additional funding over and above our norm for a large investment in fleet over the last couple of years of just over £15 million for new appliances and new specialist appliances, and then also for our new command and control system. It's multi-million pounds over the next number of years of investment that is required. So having that separate support has enabled us to focus then the 7 million on everything else that we have to do, and we haven't lost the benefit of that 7 to those 2 large projects. We make a little go a very long way, and we try to be very prepared with business cases ready and on the shelf that should money become available towards the year end, which we'll always get the phone call. So we're as prepared as we can to utilise as much as we can right across all of our demands.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. That's helpful.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your tour today as well. I was lucky enough to be here to be part of the tour. Incredible to see this site working and to meet some of your trainees today as well was great. To be able to have a little chat with them and see what they're doing here. The advances that you're able to do in this site. The scenarios that you're able to put on are absolutely huge. So basically everything you can imagine can be done repeatedly and have your trainees trained to a very high standard. It's great to see. I also believe it was built on time. Might have even opened early. Is that the case?
So again, there's a long tail of background to this. So the Tri-Service College would have had an origin around 2006-2007. In around 2014-15, PSNI and Prison Service had stepped away from the project, and Fire went alone. It became a redesignated project, still under programme for government. Phase 1 was July 19 opened and opened on time by the FBC. Phase 2 commenced construction in June 2022 with a 2-year build. And opened here in this building, and I need to be clear about this for you, opened in this building on the 10th of May 2024, which was ahead of time for this element. The remainder of the site, all the operational props out there, received sectional handover then, so we agreed a sectional handover from the contractor out to November of 2024. So over the following 6 months we took all of those other areas. So this area, this building that you're in, was ahead of time. The rest of the site was between 1 month and 6 months behind the planned construction schedule. But we took everything then on 28th of November of 2024, and we are currently in the defects liability period, which will run to the 20th of November 2025, and we're working with the contractor, with the project team, to close out any remaining liabilities and defects on the site.
Thank you. It's really great to see the site has obviously developed through that and is operational now at the minute, and we can see trainees making use of it, and so much potential here for other people to do so as well. We talked today about Paul. You had talked about the fire ongoing at Clocker. Can you talk about just how you said 100 firefighters are attending that at the minute? How does that affect your operational capacity here in Northern Ireland?
So, as I said on my way down.
Could you try again?
Somebody else is listening.
Sorry.
Yeah, so on my way down here, before I came here, I was in the command room, and that's where our regional control centre are monitoring all operational activity. They're also monitoring what our availability is across Northern Ireland. And beside the regional control centre, we have our command room, where we have a number of officers in there, again assessing how can we maintain our service delivery. Because as the Chief said, when our firefighters are up the mountain, they're not available in their towns, in the cities and the villages to attend house fires and RTC. So we have a balance to strike there around making sure that we move resources. So we have a considerable number of standby moves across Northern Ireland now which have taken place to make sure that we still have our operational footprint and that we can respond as quickly as we can to those emergencies, and making sure that there are very limited areas that have a reduced capacity or reduced response. But that is a piece of work in and of itself. So there is a long tail behind what you see on the fireground. There is a whole network and a wraparound support that goes into making sure that we provide that business continuity. And it is a question that we get regularly, and our head of strategic comms is with us, and one that she will face regularly, are how are you maintaining, if you've got 100 firefighters up a mountain, is my village or my town or my house left without it? And we work really tirelessly in the background to make sure that that's not the case. However, as we saw, and where we declared the major incident a number of weeks ago, where we have a really long, sustained period of operational activity and high demand, there is an impact on firefighters. There's only so long that they can go for before they need rest and recuperation. And those on-call firefighters, there's only so long they can take off their primary employment to be able to deploy onto wildfire. So it is always a challenge, but there are an officer cadre and support staff and professional services who are in behind making sure that we can continue to deliver our service.
Thank you. I think you had mentioned, Aidan, that you think a lot of these fires are started maliciously. That's really, really concerning to hear. Obviously, huge drain on your resources, danger to life, danger to property. What can we do to educate the public about the danger of these fires?
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot in that. These are almost always in very remote areas. So they're a very difficult thing in terms of fire investigation to pinpoint cause, and we have fire investigators who go out and do that now as well. We're convinced that the majority of these are lit deliberately. I think Paul touched on it earlier, and I'd probably go back to what Paul has talked about. We do a lot of work, and Maria's here today. Her team do an amazing piece of work. You'll see our social media, you'll see our engagement with the public around our key safety messaging. I won't go through all of that today, but there's a clear message around taking care of the countryside. Enjoy it, but take care of it, look after it. There's a clear message about the impact of it in terms of education, and it's that piece again about when your firefighters are there, they're not somewhere else, and when you're at risk, you need them to be somewhere else that you have that risk. So in the towns, in the cities, available to respond to the road traffic collisions and those other calls and range of calls that we get. The piece Paul spoke about, which is so important here, is that this is not a fire service only problem. At the point of fire, we're the agency who are looked at to respond, and that's right and proper. But that's about response, and pouring money into a response model is not the answer here. It is about prevention, it is about education, it's about working with landowners, it's about ensuring that people's behaviours, it's about changing behaviour, that this is not seen as something which is attractive, or not seen as something where people want to come and watch because multiple fire plants will turn up, or there'll be a fire or smoke. I was the incident commander, gold commander at the Mournes major incident in 2021, and those photographs of Newcastle and the Mournes ablaze that night will stick with me forever. I could standing looking at it from Newcastle on the shore coming in at literally the skyline of the Mournes is shocking. The impact on our environment, the impact on wildlife is significant. Paul and I have spent a career there doing that in different places and different locations, and we see that up close and front hand, the impact on wildlife as well, and our firefighters do as well. We've got to do more together, not just fire, but with fire and other agencies, to stop this happening. We've got to challenge behaviours. We have had a really successful prevention campaign over a number of decades now around fire, but it wasn't done by fire alone. It's working with industry, it's smoke alarms and the fitness smoke alarms in homes, it's going into schools and working with the education department, it's delivering and visiting every pre-5 class now for I think 26 years for everyone that came through primary 5, where they received a visit from the Fire and Rescue Service, and we talked about the risks and we talked about the behaviours which would challenge fire, and we've seen over that time, including things like the furniture regulations, whereby there's been a reduction, not just in Northern Ireland but across the UK and beyond, of behaviours around fire and risk and loss of life. We've got to bring that focus to the space of wildfire, and I've no doubt in the future to the space of flood and climate change and all of those other risks which are emergent that we see. Prevention is key, and there's a number of strands to that, and multiple agencies who must play their part.
Thank you for that. One last question, if it's all right. You had talked briefly about Maggie's call.
Yes.
I know that came about because of an incident in Glenarm in the East Antrim constituency where young Maggie Black passed away, sadly. Now Maggie's call would seem to provide more emergency service, more emergency response to rural areas. Could you talk a bit more about how that might work? What would that look like?
Surely, yeah, more than happy to. I've been involved in that from the outset, and I stay in touch and still speak to Maggie's mum, Sheena, frequently. She's a source of huge inspiration. She's a remarkable lady. She really is. Look, effectively, Maggie's call was born in that sense in December 2021 when young Maggie Black lost her life at 5 years of age. Tragic, tragic scenario. Fire and Rescue Service, a member of the Fire and Rescue Service were related to Sheena, and a call was made that morning as well as the ambulance service to Martin, the watch commander in Carnlough. Martin responded and took a defibrillator from the local station, local shop, Spar, and he also called our control room, and the control room mobilised the fire plants to come and assist. Tragically, Maggie didn't survive, and the ambulance response times were, I think it was in the region of 50 minutes at the time. I went to Coroner's Court after that with the medical director and ambulance stuff. We presented, and we've met with Sheena, Maggie's mum, multiple occasions after that. We're really clear that that's somewhere we want to go, and we think it will make a difference. What I would say is that it can't be Fire and Rescue Service in the gap that might be created in another provision. So I know you'll be speaking with ambulance colleagues later. There'll be no surprises in anything I say, should you raise that question with them. We've worked really, really closely with them. We are hand in glove in taking this forward. We got it going and it went live in Carnlough. It didn't progress beyond Carnlough at that time, but we've not stopped the work in the background to take it to the right place. In fact, in the background, we have, not just in the world of EMR, but for firefighter safety, because tragically we've also lost firefighters at operational incidents who suffered from cardiac arrest for a range of reasons. And I recall one in Lurgan a number of years ago, which had a huge impact in the service. So we now have defibrillators on every frontline fire. All of those pumping plants I talked about now carry a defibrillator. We have equipment on stations for firefighters, and not all, but a number of our firefighters who work through the organisation have completed a first response emergency care training package. We have equipment going on the stations now to allow firefighters to train and maintain their skills in relation to CPR, but we're not there yet. It's a space whereby I say it can't be us in the gap from other health provision. What I'm saying there is this is a co-responding scheme if it's made to work. And it's a co-responding scheme because we could respond from some of our stations. We could support where firefighters appropriately trained, and they're not all at this point in time. I need to be clear about that, and that comes at cost. If we had all of the right equipment PPE, and we don't have in every case at this point in time, and that's something we could discuss further or take outside. However, it's not something which sits within the roadmap of the firefighter. So there is a conversation here. Firefighter terms and conditions and firefighter pay is a nationally negotiated through the NJC position. So it's in that space that if we're going to take this forward, we must work. I hear occasionally that it's the rep body that are in the way of this and are a problem in that. I have a different opinion. I think actually the rep body are a huge enabler for this, and I think they're part of the solution. And we continue those conversations and work with them. Will it affect outcomes? I think it will. That model of 67 fire stations is something that provide help, but it can't be us in the gap, because at the point of a call and co-response, the ambulance service must be mobilising. The call must go to the ambulance service. It must come to their control room. They need to mobilise their resources because we are not paramedics, and someone in that situation needs immediately and quickly primary care. We would be doing, to a large extent, that's which the ambulance service community first responders do. I think we could make a difference. But I have to stress that the ambulance service must be coming, and they must be effective in the response as well, because someone needs to be taken quickly to hospital, to primary care, and we are not geared for that. That is not the fire service. You could not transport in a fire plant. That is not how that would work. So it is again in the space of collaboration and in the space of together, as opposed to something we alone could deliver. And I guess that's the conversation. It's a national discussion around terms and conditions, and then it's a continued collaborative piece of work with our colleagues in the ambulance service. Just 6 weeks ago, Maggie's mum Sheena was in the office with me. The chief executive then, Michael's moved on, but Michael was there, and we had, again, a number of those conversations. We've stayed engaged. Equally, if you look now outside, each of our fire stations, they're publicly accessible. Defibrillators in the front of all of those stations. So we've done a lot, and we continue to engage. I think there's more to come in that space.
And it would be great if something that could make a difference could come out of something that was a terrible tragedy.
Definitely.
So thank you for that.
Thank you. Colin?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the visit today. I think "whoa" is the only answer you can come up with, word you can come up with. It's just such a fabulous facility, and to be able to see it operationally today, and literally MLAs are used to feeling the heat, but to actually be in there today in some of those rooms literally feeling an awful lot of heat today, it just really helped us maybe to get a small sense of the work that is undertaken on a day and daily basis and the dangers that people face in their work, and that always impresses. Much of what I was going to ask has been covered, but I just wanted maybe to probe a wee bit, and I'm not sure if I picked up on it right, but are you getting an opportunity as an organisation, either on your own right or through the department, as part of the consultation about the sort of burn periods for, I think there's no, I just think there's no thought process goes into realising that the fires are the fires are happening annually at the same time, because they come up in my Facebook memories every time there's a fire and I open up my Facebook. There's a memory from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. So, and we don't get the same amount of memories come July, August, September, whenever the weather can be as warm. So I don't think it's very difficult to draw the line here. But I do think that we need to try and do something to change something, because the amount of resource that you are expending to manage this is a huge drain, that if it was in any other part of the public purse, there would be, action would have been demanded a long time ago. But there is a consultation, I think, out there at the minute. Are you able to feed in to be part of that? And do you feel that the department is listening to your concerns that are raised about those matters?
Yes, look, I'll take that, and again, I'll probably be clear, Paul will want to come in behind me this, because I know he's done some direct work in the last number of weeks. Yes, in short, we are. Tuesday week before last, our own minister, who was so supportive, I couldn't have asked for a better relationship across that 2 weeks of 10 days. He was out with us. He wasn't out with us. He very intentionally said, "Not coming out to get in your way." Really, really positive for us. But was on the phone, had written, communicated with us, as did his officials, hugely supportive in the background of everything and anything that our people needed. I couldn't have asked for more, but did indicate he wanted to come out afterwards, and then did. He came with, and in partnership with, the Dear Minister, so Minister Muir came as well. He wanted to meet firefighters and thank them. He did so at our headquarters, came in and spoke to those control room operators, who are often forgotten and really, really shouldn't be. They do sit, and I'm thinking about a former member of our service who used to call them and refer to them as the heartbeat of the service, and they are. Everything starts and finishes in the control room. Every call that comes in and every last appliance come back to the station is managed through our control room. So he came in and spoke to the control room. He saw how our command room works that Paula's talked about today, as did Minister Muir alongside him. We then went out to the front of our building at headquarters, saw some of those resources and capabilities, our burn teams, our command support units, some of the NEA equipment, specific equipment for wildfire. And then we get in and travelled down to Ballynahinch Station, spoke to the on-call firefighters there, who are in a core of stations around Ballynahinch, Newcastle, Kilkeel, Burnpoint, Newry, who respond around the Lorns together constantly. And he had a really good discussion and conversation, acknowledged and thanked. Burn periods, the consultation, the work with the Environment Agency, all of that was strategically and widely discussed on that evening with our political leads in those work, and we are working very closely with them. Even the strategic way forward approach, Paul's done some specific work on that chief executive of NIEA in recent weeks. We're clear, it's get this right and go forward with the right approach. And I think Paul said it really well earlier, it's not about additional money to support response, it's about stopping the need for response, a lot of which comes to burn periods and prevention and education that Annie's talked about as well. Paul, is there anything you want to add to that?
Look, you've covered most of it, but what I would say that I mentioned earlier about that need for a Northern Ireland-wide capability, because it won't just be one thing that will stop this. There has to be, it is about education, it's about changing behaviours, it is about assessing whether the burn periods are adequate and necessary, or has that changed. And we'd welcome, and we will take the opportunity to be part of that public consultation. As I said, we are leaning very much into this space, but we can't do it by ourselves. That will take everything from reviewing the legislation around burn periods right through to enforcement of any regulations that DERA may, or enforcement regulations that they may have. And Yeah, so anything in this space that can stop the need for us to respond, we're very much on the front foot to engage. So yes, we will make a response to that consultation.
And hopefully that will make a difference, by changing that legislation, because you can nearly set your watch to when those big fires happen in the mornings, and it's draining facility, but starting to risk life as well with how they're starting to encroach into to towns and villages as well, which is worrying for people and for people that live there. Maybe a smaller point just to pick up on it. I was kind of shocked whenever you had said that you can only give these facilities, you can only rent them out at cost recovery. Obviously a facility like this would have the potential from if there were private sector opportunities, and I'm not saying that that's an area that we should be massively straying into, but if there were opportunities that could help to raise money which could go back into the service, who is it that officially says that it has to be cost recovery only, and is that something that all of government is attached to, or is it something just is there anything that can be done there to try and help?
There's a couple of bits, and again, my colleague Paula will come in behind. So I talked about the opportunities of this site. We need to be clear and careful about that as well. This is, whilst we opened this part just under a year ago now, as we sit here on the 8th, it was 10th of May last year, this building was opening, and the rest of it came across the next 6 months. It's not the Tri-Service College, it's not that which it was. It is, and the business case was for our need, Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service need, so we have to be really clear about what the facility is for. But the opportunities there, and there is capacity, particularly out there in the operational props and in facilities like this room, probably to do more and do more together and do better, therefore. However, we are also very conscious that all of that piece I talked about at the start, about how firefighter training is changing, National Occupational Standards, Fire Standards Board, our need and training requirements are growing and developing, and we are literally over the door here. We've got to understand the use of the facility, we've got to understand the cost of the facility. You can't recover costs until you fully understand them. So we've got to learn to crawl, and then we've got to learn to walk, and then we've got to learn to run in this wonderful new facility. So we want to very carefully step forward in that space. What we do have from our department is a real willingness and a support to look at. And what we do certainly have from CCGNI and the Executive Office. I mean, CCGNI also, and I didn't mention that one earlier, has been held in this room. So they too have been here. The Executive Office has been here, and the Civil Contingencies Group for Northern Ireland has been run here. And I did mention it in the site, we could test every risk on the Northern Ireland risk register at this site, at multiple layers and levels. So the opportunities are huge. But we've got to understand the site, we've got to understand our costs. Our position is that that's going to take a little bit of time, but where we can, and you can see it in the Partners of Choice, we're starting to open those doors. So we're signed up with the ambulance service, who are definitely a partner of choice, and they're delivering training here. We've some work going on with the National Fire Directorate around collapse structure coming out of the Creaslock incident, and they'll be starting some training here next week around urban search and rescue, tools familiarisation as they look to develop that capability in the south of Ireland. So there are multiple agencies and organisations here coming in to do that, and we're looking at cost recovery. It is cost recovery for us. It's not about making profit, and it's about full cost recovery around the assets and depreciation of the assets as well. And that's a managing public money NI position. So we're not running out and selling the site, I guess, in that space. We're carefully stepping through it to understand our use, our costs, and we've got to do that and step through it. But I don't underestimate the potential of that, and I'm absolutely an advocate for that and drive that very hard.
You mentioned earlier, like for example, the flood facility that previously before that was there, and it's one of two in the world. Yeah. But you would have had to have gone somewhere else to access the training for that. But would that have been at simple cost recovery level, or were you having to pay a certain amount that was because you had to go somewhere else and give our money to them? If we now have a facility, is there a way that they can come to us if there's the space for it, and then what's charged is
yeah. In some cases, we'd have gone and used at specific times of the year, the lagging of the row in flood, to do some of that, but it's not safe, it's not repeatable, and it's not necessarily scenario based. In some other cases, we did go nationally and internationally to get access to specific training at cost. There is an opportunity to do that, but in the same way as we went to other places and paid significant amounts of money, that detriment for others coming here in that way. But organisations, and I know we're talking specifically about the water facility in that discussion, Coast Guard, MCA, RNLI, some of those voluntary agencies through the DOJ, NIFRS ranges that we work closely with, There's a space here to do more and better together. But for us, it's cost recovery on that one. Paula, you may want to come in on that space.
Yeah, so our focus is around our strategic partnerships initially and other public sector organisations. And as the Chief has said, managing public money very much directs what cost recovery looks like. So our commercial structure, our legislative structure is not as a commercial enterprise, and that's where you need to find the balance. What we can't do is try and look to a commercial enterprise model that impacts our ability to train our people. Our people trained has to be first and foremost in terms of how the site is used. So there has been discussion around what would potentially look like into the longer future in terms of what is the statutory structure of this part of our organisation in terms of looking at more of a commercial side. But I don't think we're going to see that in the first sort of 5 years of it. And it would, I imagine, require some form of legislative change and some sort of secondary body being created to manage and deliver the site.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Arlia?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much for all the comments you've made so far. So just 3 questions. I'll start with the last one. Just on that issue then of the training and the cross-border cooperation, because I'm just conscious, Paul, even in the update that you were given today, the fact that, both agencies are responding collectively today, but you have mentioned then, Aidan, around some of the risks, even in terms of if there's variations in how people, different officers are trained north and south. You don't get a second chance when you're right there in the middle of it, responding. There's no time for risk then if there is differences. So have you found in the past when you have had to respond together that, that you can see issues, that are there in terms of, that these are 2 different organisations essentially? And the question is there, I know you mentioned different, so there is collaboration that's ongoing, but is there a consistent ongoing structure there to ensure then that when you do have to respond together that obviously you're taking away any risk of, any confusion or variation in your training processes?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. Yes, in short, the answer is yes, there are. There are a number of forums through which we deliver that. We have MOUs with all of the cross-border fire and rescue services. So in the specific fire environment, we work very closely with them. There are occasions whereby we will respond where stations are closest. Believe is Newry along the A1 as it turns into the M1 heading south for road traffic collisions. So we work very closely in all of those services. Some of those MOUs are about fire, some of them are about road traffic collisions specifically. We've had a long-standing MOU with Donegal from around 1957. So, and they work together and closely work together and exercise and train together. But I think your question takes me into what more can be done because there's constant change, and I've talked about some of that today. There's constant change in work there, and we are very much. We've held the cross-border emergency management group here now as well on a number of occasions as a principal officer team and the principal officer teams from those cross-border services. We meet, we work together, not just in the response world, but equally delivering prevention with a focus on resilient communities, both sides of the border, and equally then we have that structure of cross-border emergency management group which sits within as a part of civil contingencies and works with local councils. So yes, there's a lot that goes on, and we do exercise and train together. We understand the differences, and at a local level, we're literally, Keady might respond across the border, or Balik might respond across the border. They understand clearly, and there are clear parameters and rules around what is done and how it's done. So our firefighters are safe, and we deliver the best outcome to people. That one today, even in our command room this morning, just at a look at the screen. Our firefighters will carry radios. Those radios are chipped in a way. I can see our officers. I can see where they are in the incident ground. I can see where the border is. The fire doesn't hear the borders. We can see that and see where the officers are. And that communication strand is up clearly with officers in split place. So everyone's working together and it's a seamless response.
No, that's great. And that cross-border management group that you mentioned, so does that continuously meet? Does that just meet sort of ad hoc, or is it?
No, it is a periodic but established working group, and it's Chair Joe McCaffrey chairs that, who sits within the Civil Contingencies Group. It's representative of not only fire but other agencies as well. And again, it has met here. We have that chiefs group as well that meet outside that across all of the, and they are they're a group as well who are very keen to come and learn here. So as we improve, they improve with us, and we build on and continue to build the resilience, not just of our emergency responders, but of the communities in those areas. And some of that's a subject currently of Peace Plus applications to build and work closer in resilient communities, and actually a shared island consideration that's been done as well through North-South Ministerial Council, through our own department, through the Executive Office and through the Taoiseach's Office.
No, well, that's good that obviously that group and that structure's there, so you can identify opportunities, and whether it's through the Peace Plus, the shared island, stuff like that, where, as you said, where you can continue to build and grow together, that you are able to do that. So and you had just mentioned earlier as well, just in terms of you mentioned there around building resilience and maintaining the resilience of your staff and your officers, and even when you were talking about even the women and men that are in the control room, that might often be unseen in terms of how the response actually kicks into action. And I was just thinking that regardless of what situation you are responding to, and that varies, but you have mentioned that officers, when they're being trained, they have to be trained for obviously worst case scenario. And I'm even thinking, trying to put myself into, if you were carrying out that role in your everyday work, where you almost have to be, on standby for, in terms of you don't know what you're going to be faced with or what you're going to be dealing with. And I can only imagine that must, in terms of the mental well-being of your staff, that must take a heavy toll. It's a massive burden to take on, and it's almost like you're operating in and the work that you're doing, you're operating in a like a trauma-filled environment, in terms of what you're responding to. And so, fair play to all of your staff and everything that you do, because I certainly don't think that I would ever be equipped to deal with it mentally. It's just, I think it's completely admirable. But just in terms of then, you had mentioned earlier around, the things around the physical well-being and the cleaning of, the different equipment and stuff. So what structure is in place for the mental well-being of your staff? And that's obviously including the first responders, but the control room staff, and in fact all of the team.
Yeah, thank you. Again, a really good question, a very good probing question that takes us into the heart of the organisation and the role and purpose for firefighters. It's a difficult job. It's an inherently dangerous job, but you're absolutely right. Our firefighters are exposed day and daily to things that the human beings should not see and should not have to deal with, and they do, and they have to deal with it. I'm hugely privileged to sit in the seat that I sit in and see how good they are daily in what they do, but there's a cost and a consequence to that and an impact on that. And it can affect them in the workplace, it can affect them in homes, it can affect their relationships, and it's something that we have a very good occupational health support offer, but we are so conscious that there's always more we can do. We've built in now to our initial training courses, resilience training for our firefighters who join, to ensure that right up front at the point of arrival, firefighters know how difficult the job can be and have an understanding, not the first time they respond and come across something tragic, that they have an awareness and understanding of the role and what will expose them to. We have a clear critical incident stress management policy and procedure thereafter, where we have dedicated, trained support officers who will, at the point of any fatality or seriously incident which triggers our debrief as a result of exposure to trauma, our control room is notified, the crews that are involved, there's a debriefing at the scene, there's a follow-up very quickly back on station, and then a trigger through the control room to one of our critical incident stress managers to reach out and engage with those staff. And that is ongoing, and that it's ongoing and it's picked up again with staff, but people will be continually traumatised over a career, and there's a point in time that impacts. We need to do more, and I would not sit here today and say we have a great health offer and here's the process. We need to do more. There's no doubt about that. We do have all of those things, but I don't think we can ever have enough. And that's not just in fire, that's in ambulance service, that's in police, it's in responders across not just Northern Ireland, the UK and the world. We now have trained 2 critical incident stress management trainers, and our colleagues in ambulance service being later, they've done likewise. So we can now, we've not yet started, but with the slight changes in structure and the introduction of new middle manager roles. We're looking at more than doubling the number of critical incident stress managers as we bring those new people into post. From the 16th of June, they'll be in post, and quickly thereafter, we'll be looking at where they are and what the resources across the organisation to ensure we have a really effective response to support that critical incident stress management piece. Our OC Health offer, through the service provision, through access to the medical support, but also through a lot of the programmes that our people put in place around looking after self, mental health, fitness, well-being. We have a really good offer in that space as well, and our OC Health team at headquarters delivering that. In terms of the directors here today, our Director of People and Culture is not here, Tabitha Ramsey. She has a background in blue light response. She's been with us around 3 years, in a couple of months' time, but she's a long-serving career in emergency response in another organisation, and she's really passionate about it, and we've learned already so much from Tabitha and her experiences around what our offer is, how good it is, but how we continue to build and grow on that as the world changes, as our people change, and again, in some ways, as they're potentially exposed to less in response that might have come in the past, exposed to different things. Road traffic collisions and speed create terrible consequences, and our people are out there dealing with that.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine, and it's interesting because recently I done a meeting with it was actually with men and women who were previously in the police service, and it was the first time I got their sort of feedback and their perspective in terms of this particular group of people had come together because they were dealing with obviously a lot of trauma on the back of the job that they were carrying out. And then, sadly, there was, some members that had taken their own life. A lot of them had turned to addiction and substance use. And it was sort of, their feeling was that, because of the role that they take on and how the public just see, first responders, whether it's firefighters or policemen or women or ambulance service, you just see those people doing a job, but you're not thinking about all of the aftermath. And as you had says as well, trauma can unearth itself at any stage. So it's brilliant to hear the structures that you have in place, and obviously I've no doubt that you keep a close watch of that, regardless of what stage anyone's at, in their career, because that stuff, that you are dealing with, as you said, when you see issues like that, whether it's a road traffic collision or a house fire or whatever, you can't unsee that or unthink that. So I'm really pleased to hear the stuff that you have taken forward. And if there is, as you were saying, like most things that you can build on and make better, please keep us up to speed in terms of the Health Committee in any way that we can, champion and act on your behalf to help improve those services. My final question was around, it was a point that Paul made earlier, just around then, so some of the more sort of broader, longer term global issues, so around the wildfires, the climate change, and you had mentioned, Paul, around, trying to build or secure, political cross-departmental support. So it's great to hear all the feedback that each of you have had around Mike Nesbitt and the Department of Health, because it seems to be that that they are working very well with yourselves, and you do feel that support. But in terms of them broader political support, I would just be interested in, again, what role we can play as a health committee to help build on some of that for you. And I'm not sure if obviously the Department of Health would be your main point of contact. That's your lead department. But have you had any conversations with the Executive Office at any level to raise some of those bigger global challenges that you are all facing?
Take that, that's okay. Sure. And thanks for the question. And I agree with you. Our community risk management plan, which you have, is underpinned by what we call our strategic assessment of risk. This is about us horizon scanning and very carefully looking at the data, both individually about where we feel the next potential people will die from a fire in their home, or where we are seeing hotspots for road traffic collisions. And it's that evidence and data that builds up our holistic picture of where our demand is going to come from. On top of that, then, we do horizon scanning about what is happening elsewhere. Where are we seeing? And we talk quite a bit about the wildfires, but we also see an increase in flooding. And there are other changes in technology, such as battery energy storage systems that we're seeing domestically in industry and in cars, bikes, scooters. which are having an impact. And we haven't fully realised the full impact of what those really look like across the sector. So the alternative fuels, whether it be hydrogen, buses that we see on our roads now, and what are the impact of those that we see going forward. So there's a lot of work going on by us engaging with the other fire and rescue services across the UK around what does that look like. What the body of evidence is growing, we're seeing it, but how do we react to that? How do we then transfer that into the training which will be delivered here? How do we equip them with the right equipment? What additional PPE do they need? And finally, then, how do we link into the executive office around civil contingencies, NI, who have the responsibility for the emergency planning and preparedness across all departments in the executive, because that's the key. We cannot do this on our own. Health can't do it on their own. They will deal with the consequences of it. But how do we get in front of that across all the departments, whether it be wildfire, whether it be any other type of threat or risk that we see? And the Civil Contingency Group and CCG and I have specific work streams that scenario plan out, where they look at the reasonable worst case scenario for each of those risks which are identified nationally, first and foremost through the National Risk Assessment and the National Risk Register, and then look at what those impacts might be here in Northern Ireland. And again, we're standing members of all the working groups that under CCG and I around preparedness for that. So yes, we will do our own data analysis around where we see the risks in relation to our statutory duty, but actually what are the risks to the community, because that's what this plan is built on. The Community Risk Management Plan is built on what are those risks, not built on here's the service we're going to provide with the budgets that we're given. It's here's the service we need to provide based on the risk to the members of the public. And so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I suppose the point really around, because although there's structures already there that, where people feed in, and as you said, where you're breaking down the data and trying to have that foresight in terms of where the greatest risk is that cuts right across society. And I know that obviously the Health Minister is, your main point of contact there, the department that has the oversight, but I do think that it's such an important issue. It's how you, and I suppose Mike Nesbitt, I've no doubt, will be feeding this in at executive level, but it's almost trying to get the mindset of all government departments, focused on this, because it's so critically important. I think that's the point. I'm just trying to think of ways of how we can try and elevate, the importance in terms of the issues that you are dealing with. And, as it says earlier, the fact that I think you were saying, Aidan, that you can already, as we sit here today, identify the people right now that are at risk, where we know that, bad things and accidents are going to happen. So, a lot of this obviously is preventable, but it cuts across all the departments take on that responsibility, whether it's communities, education, DAERA, so maybe it's something for the committee to think about, and even feedback to the other departments following on from today's visit. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've run way past our time, which I'm shocked at. So I just want to thank you again for allowing us the facility, allowing us the opportunity to see around it. And obviously this has been important to and fro in terms of us getting a sense of the good work that you do, but also the challenges that you and your service face. So Aidan, Paula and Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to come on.
No bar.
Thank you.
So, members, just given that there's 5 of us here, we didn't go through the minutes. So, can I just ask, when we have 5 members here, members are content that the minutes of the previous meeting are a true and accurate reflection? Yep. No matters rising? No? Okay, thank you. So, we're just going to swiftly move on then to our briefing from the ambulance service.
Chair, I'm unlikely to make it to the end.
And that's why I wanted to do the minutes when you're here. So can I just ask in advance of the ambulance service plan, at what point can we no longer continue meeting? Okay. So
is there any other further decision items that we have here?
No. Anything that's for decision we'll put back to next week.
Okay.
But once we drop the 3, we have to cut them. So,
is anybody else to
Half 4.
Hammer time.
Half 4.
Thank you so much.
I'm carrying duties that I need to do
No,
before I have
absolutely.
to be in the youth club at 7 o'clock. So it's like, and it's an hour and a half from home. So,
Okay. Right, so thank you very much. Just members, we're going to swiftly move on. So we have had a briefing paper from the Ambulance Service. That's at page 55 of our table of papers. Can I welcome Neil Sinclair, Chief Paramedic Officer and Interim Director of Operations at the Ambulance Service, and also Lynn, Charlton, Director of Safety, Quality and Improvement within the Ambulance Service. So I'm just going to hand over to yourselves for a brief introduction, and we're going to take questions from members.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to the committee members, and thank you for the invite to come along to the committee meeting today. We really welcome the opportunity to update the committee on our key challenges and priorities for the ambulance service. It is with regret that our Interim Chief Executive, Maxine Patterson, can't be with us today following a recent family bereavement, so we'd like to offer her apologies, but I am joined today by Neil. So in advance of the meeting today, we did provide a committee with a briefing paper containing information on our key areas. We will provide the committee with a short verbal overview, as you've requested, and then we'd be happy to take any follow-up questions. So throughout the year, it's well known that the service has navigated an extremely challenging landscape, and we would wish to note our sincere gratitude to our staff for the resilience and the professionalism that they have shown as they've worked tirelessly, demonstrating their commitment to the communities that we serve. When our former Chief Executive was here and joined as Chief Executive colleagues in the Health Committee in November 24, an update was provided to the committee in relation to the significant pressures across the health and social care system, and reference was made to demand outstripping capacity, to driving increases in numbers of unmet packages in social care, longer patient stays, challenges in patients' discharge, and overcrowding in the ED. As timely ambulance handovers do rely significantly on other aspects of the emergency system functioning effectively, in the context of those system-wide pressures, NIAS has been challenged, particularly with increasing handover delays at hospital. So this results obviously in protracted response times for our patients requiring an emergency ambulance response in the community, and also for patients waiting in the back of an ambulance as they wait for handover to the emergency department. And we as an organisation and as individuals are acutely aware of the human impact that this can have on those who need our service, and their families and their carers. We have heard directly, as no doubt members of the committee have as well, of the resultant poor experiences and indeed the devastating impact that this can have. And additionally, those delayed ambulance handover delays can impact staff health and well-being, as you can imagine. And as our staff often finish their shifts much later than anticipated and miss their rest periods during their shift. So the recently published Northern Ireland Audit Office report highlights the dramatic deterioration in ambulance handover times in Northern Ireland and the worsening performance of the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service standards of completing a handover within 15 minutes. The Getting It Right First Time report relating to emergency departments references ambulance handover delays as the biggest single risk to patients in the emergency care system of Northern Ireland. The Trust do acknowledge the critical contribution we make to transformation and improvement. We're excited to work on the opportunities and continue to work internally within the organisation and collaboratively with our colleagues across the system to deliver improvements to improve system-wide flow and improve responsiveness to our patient needs. We're aware of the national improvements in hospital handover and response as a result of implementation of models of handover in England, and we're working closely with SPPG and our HSC Trust colleagues in relation to the potential adoption of the principles of such models within Northern Ireland. We're also contributing to the recently established regional work led by the CNO and the CMO in relation to whole system flow, and we would therefore like to focus the last few points of our overview on the following key areas: statistics around the ambulance handovers, ambulance response times, and then to finish with NIAS commitment to working collaboratively across the system to improve the outcomes. I'm just going to hand over to Neil to touch on some of these areas.
Thank you, Lynn. Afternoon, Chair, afternoon, Committee. I'll just take us through some of these headlines that Lynn has outlined. So, start with hospital handover. In the year 24-25, NIAS has lost 26% of our operational capacity as a result of ambulance handover delays. Despite the efforts across HSC and the regionally agreed backstop position of no delays of greater than 2 hours, This has not been achieved over the 24-25 period. 18% of all ambulance handovers exceeded 2 hours, which is a 3% increase on the year before. In terms of financial consequence, the Northern Ireland Audit Office report highlights that has lost an estimated £50 million of resources from the years 1920 to 23-24. So to cover response times, ambulance response times have increased over the past year, largely due to system pressures. NIFRS operates a response model called the Ambulance Response Programme, which supports triaging patients aligned to their clinical needs and prioritises the sickest patients first. Response to patients within this response model are divided into 3 main response categories, which I'll just give a brief overview on the response times which we've managed. Category 1 has a target of an average of 8 minutes. In the past year, we have not met that target, and our mean has been 11 minutes and 57 seconds. Category 2 has a mean response time of 18 minutes. NIFRS has not met that and has an average response time of 58 minutes and 20 seconds. Category 3 has a response time, a mean of 120 minutes. We have not met that with a mean of 141 minutes, and just to demonstrate the pressure we have, the 90th percentile that we relate to has been 6 hours. So overall, a challenge in development for NIFRS to respond in times of aligned to the aims, mostly due to demand and capacity issues being challenged, directly related to the hospital handover for a large portion of that. Although what we are doing is we are making as many internal developments as we can to try and mitigate that and deliver the best care that we can, which I'll just cover a few of, if that is okay. So the development and implementation of a new clinical strategy has been key for NIFRS to continue to evolve. The space of paramedicine has really continues to modernise in recent years. It's a fairly new profession. It's developed within my lifetime. And paramedics are now adopting a broader role of out-of-hospital care, where we deliver care to patients in the community and in out-of-hospital settings, versus the historic label of pre-hospital care, where we would care for someone and take them to a hospital site. Focus on NIFRS ability as an HSC Health and Social Care Trust, as well as an ambulance service and the provider of the paramedic profession, to make developments to support more patients who are appropriately in the community via alternative care pathways to the emergency department, where the emergency department is absolutely appropriate as and where required, whilst ensuring we always maintain a focus on our critically ill and injured patients and deliver the best care possible for them. To allow us to, realise this, we're engaging with an external company to conduct a data-driven demand and capacity review to provide us with an objective, tangible roadmap as an evidence base to continue to deliver this clinical strategy and realise the benefits. As a couple of more tangible elements around that, we have made developments on what we call hear and treat. So that is when somebody has phoned 999, they speak to our non-clinician but highly trained call handler. They go through a triage system. If it is deemed not to be a time-critical call, we have additional clinicians within the control room who provide further clinician-led triage to them, with the principles of being preventing ambulance response and giving that patient the best advice over the telephone and pathway, signposting to the most appropriate pathway in the community. Remodelling our structures has been delivered in combination with our commissioners over the last year and a year plus, and has shown some real benefits from us in the initial period. Give you a couple of the highlights. So what we call our hear and treat rate, so the amount of people who have been treated over the phone and don't require an ambulance response, has gone from approximately 3% to 6%, with a trajectory to aim towards 10%. We are providing telephone decision support through that function to all of our clinicians, including our growing volume of what we call newly qualified paramedics. Within that team, we have taken a multidisciplinary approach and have partnered with South Eastern Trust and the Public Health Agency to introduce mental health practitioners at key times. Bringing in that expertise is key for us, because as an ambulance service and as paramedics, we have an understanding of mental health, but we're not experts. So bringing those experts in at key times, weekends, evenings, to deal with those patients has been really beneficial. The initial data has shown us there's approximately, for those patients, a 40% reduction in need for response or transport onto an ED compared to the historic model. So that shows some great benefits, and we are continuing to develop that model, understand how we can benchmark ourselves against other services, how we can continue to deliver best care and continue to develop the system to allow our clinicians to have access to as many patients as possible. The next elements which we developed is what we call around see and treat. So when we have responded to scene, We assess what that patient needs, and we look for the most appropriate care pathway for them. So let me, I guess, come back to the start of my career, where you're very much 20 years ago plus, you responded to a patient, you treated them, you took them to hospital. Now we have a very much a different focus in modern paramedicine. We need to work out what that patient needs and deliver that care pathway. So working with the territorial trusts, we developed a suite of over approximately 40 care pathways spread across a range of conditions, which allow us options to refer patients in the community, to transport them to non-ED sites, and consider such areas such as palliative care, etc., and make sure these patients get the exact care that they need in very challenging times. Technology development, just to give you insight, so a folder of pathways is very hard to access, so we developed a smartphone app which allows clinicians across the region access to these in one place. So if you are potentially out of your normal operating region, you understand where the pathways are, and we can optimise access to these pathways. And we've also supported our clinicians with a revised annual education programme, so we're not just pushing this onto our clinicians, we're supporting them with a defined education package to ensure that their understanding, their decision-making rationale and their understanding of these pathways is continually developed and as a rolling programme. And we have an ongoing improvement trajectory and plan around this, which we're really focusing on optimising all opportunities for patients to be treated by alternatives and doing the right things for patients. The last couple of elements would be around the development of advanced paramedics, which we're just starting in Northern Ireland. So this aligns the development of this to the Northern Ireland Allied Healthcare Professions Advanced Practice Strategy. With commissioners, we've appointed our first 15 advanced paramedics in urgent care in NIAS, and they're just taking up post just now and starting their training programme. Their training programme will be a postgraduate programme in comparison to the undergraduate, which would be the normal paramedic training. This will provide these advanced paramedics with additional skills in assessment, treatment, decision-making, things like non-medical prescribing, and really open up a next level of treatment and the ability to treat more patients in the community and treating patients in a different way, different access to further pathways, etc. This is obviously a key benefit for patients. It's a key benefit for the system if we take less patients to the emergency department, but it's also a key development for the profession in Northern Ireland, matching us to career frameworks seen across the UK, matching us to career frameworks as recommended by the College of Paramedics, but also allows us to really increase our ability to recruit and attract paramedics and also retain our staff. The last element, just as the final comment, is just around the workforce plan. So we have developed with external partners support an objective and accurate recruitment plan, and this is supporting the introduction of an additional 50 newly qualified paramedics and 50 emergency medical technicians in the past year. And this has been developed in partnership with our sponsors. So it's an additional intake of staff, and then we are really looking forward in terms of understanding our attrition rates, retirement rates, etc., and make sure that we have a best route forward in that space. So thank you, that's all from me, and obviously happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, that was very thorough. So just going to open straight to questions from members. Danny.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation today. Obviously, one of the things that we hear about quite regularly from constituents is the waits. Yeah. And it is, as you describe it, the handovers. It is the handover time. Reading the report, there was consideration of potential adoption of impactful models used elsewhere. Could you just elaborate a bit on that, about what those models are and what you would like to see?
Yeah. Lynn, do you want to pick up?
Well, I'm happy to pick that one up, actually. I think that... Sure. Yeah. I think we'll refer to it as the London model, really, and some of our learnings, in fact, our SPPG colleagues had facilitated a visit, which I had the privilege of being on, to observe the model that they had in place in a hospital within London. Some other terminologies that are used are W45, which is indicating that the waiting time, the handover time, should not exceed 45 minutes. I can give you some experience in terms of the visit that I had in London. in terms of the actual presentation of ambulance arrivals was very similar to some of our hospitals, and so was the overall attendances. And so what was different in that particular visit? First of all, they started with an average handover time of 70 minutes. In Northern Ireland, just to put that into context, ours last month was 74 minutes. And it was 85 minutes, for example, in February, and December was probably our worst in record, where it was over 100 minutes. So they started at a similar starting point, if you like, and they have managed to get theirs down consistently over the last 18 months to 27 minutes of handover. And as you can imagine, consequently, then they're seeing an improvement in their response times because that operational capacity is released to respond to individuals in the community. When we've talked to them about the ingredients, if you like, that they have that are different to us, there is not really anything that is significantly different in terms of innovation. There are two key things that we would bring to the committee's attention. One is in relation to complex delays, so where individuals are remaining in an acute hospital bed but they don't have the acute hospital needs, if you like, or medical needs. We have roughly a percentage of around 16 to 17% in Northern Ireland. It was 10%. So that was a significant difference in terms of their bed occupation. The other thing that was somewhat different is Neil has described some of the efforts in Northern Ireland around appropriate care pathways and avoidance of conveyance to ED, and I should say safe avoidance of conveyance to ED, so that there is a number of alternative appropriate care pathways would better meet the needs of the patient and prevent them coming to ED, where we know it's not the best place for them, or if they don't need to be there in an acute hospital. Their conveyance was around 50 to 60%, and in Northern Ireland we're sitting up around the high 60s, 70%. Some of that is because we don't have the same alternatives in Northern Ireland, and in truth one of the pieces of work that we're working collaboratively across the system is to try and make sure that we have reduced the unwarranted variation between trust areas in Northern Ireland in relation to our pathways. What does it mean for our staff? For example, some of our staff may start their shift in Ballymena in the Northern Trust. They may then go and get a call towards Belfast and be within the Belfast Trust, and then they may get a call within the South Eastern Trust. So for a clinician, one of the things that Neil has described is we're trying to make it easy for them to navigate through those care pathways and some of the variances between trusts, because you nearly would have to think, where am I today, or what trust, what area I'm in and what time is it? So that's the piece of work we're doing collaboratively with our colleagues across the Trust. So SPPG, as I say, facilitated that visit for us, and I went with colleagues from some of the other geographical trusts. We observed all of those things, and we are now working with SPPG to understand, even if the model is not exactly the same, is the principles of the model, can they be applied in Northern Ireland landscape? And if not, trying to understand why that wouldn't be the case. I think that there is definitely intent there, and we are, as I say, being supported by SPPG in this space, so we are hopeful that this will translate into seeing some of those benefits to those models throughout Northern Ireland as we move forward.
And certainly that sounds good, that sounds hopeful. Where we are at the minute is horrendous, and certainly we get that from our constituents, and as you said, losing 26% of operational capacity, that's just unsustainable. We know the risks of people being longer in overcrowded A&Es, longer hospital stays, increased mortality. There are significant risks to patients because of the system. But certainly I think the thing that you had identified there is the complex waits, and certainly we are aware of that. We had the opportunity to go to the ambulance control room a couple of months ago. It was last year maybe. And we were able to see the mental health pilot in action, and to hear about those numbers, the drop of 40% is absolutely phenomenal, and to have those other appropriate care pathways really is fantastic. So there obviously is good work going on, and see and treat again as well. And you'd mentioned palliative care. We'd heard recently that paramedics are now assessing palliative care patients at home rather than conveying them inappropriately to hospital, which is something that's, in a situation such as that, sensitive. Fantastic that you're able to make that decision at the time. Can I ask just about, you'd mentioned the SPPG, is there good co-production with the department about how we progress this going forward? Are you getting that collaboration?
Certainly, I think we can just speak to the work that the CMO and CNO are leading currently in relation to the whole system flow. One of the areas, one of the work streams actually, which is within that, is something you've just referred to there, which is about avoiding conveyance for individuals who are at the end of their life to hospital, because obviously that's not where any of us want to be, and that is one of the dedicated work streams. There is also a very clear lens around the frail elderly. About 60% of our calls are for patients who are over 65. They do tend to be, I suppose, proportionately in the lower category of call, which would be our category 3s, for example. These are individuals perhaps who are elderly patients who have fallen, just to give one example. And what we know is, because of the pressures that we have around the response and the priority of the category 1 and category 2 calls, these individuals tend to wait longer. And as you have said, you will have heard your constituents tell you about elderly people who may have been in the ground for a long period of time. And their appropriate care pathways we would like to navigate through around falls, etc. But in terms of the co-production with the Department of Health, that piece that's been happening now with CMO and the CNO, certainly we're very engaged. All of the trusts are very engaged. There is real co-production in terms of what are the things that we can do that will give us the biggest impact there before the winter months. And obviously we have pressures all over the year or throughout the year. So I would say that that's there. In terms of SPPG, as I say, they did facilitate the visit around the model. We're keen to work with all of our trusts to try and get that model implemented. We referenced there the late finishes that our staff have. And I think that that is a real challenge for us as an organisation, as you can imagine, and for our staff, obviously. And I think it is about the frequency of the late finish, and for some of them at the extreme, the duration of the late finish. So we have worked collaboratively with our other trust colleagues around trying to avoid our staff being held at EDs for handover at shift handover time, because some of our staff work 12-hour shifts. If they're late off their shift, then they go back to the station and then they have to drive home. And so it's a particularly long day, and in truth we lose the capacity the next day because they're due a compensatory rest. And that's a dynamic risk that's harder to manage. So whilst we have seen some improvements around the shift handover protocol, we've not achieved the aim of not having any. To give you some context, we would have had 90 of our crew still waiting at shift handover last week in the evening, and almost 50 in the morning. So we're not there yet, certainly, because of the significant pressures that our colleagues in the trust are experiencing at the moment.
Thank you.
Sorry. I was just going to add, around the SPPG engagement, our developments around advanced practice and integrated clinical hub have all been supported and co-produced and collaborated together. So from my perspective, it's been good engagement.
It's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, the public, when they think of the ambulance service, expect a service that, when somebody rings them up, the ambulance and paramedics appear within a very short time frame, deals with the situation or takes them via ambulance to the hospital. So, Neil, you've outlined the response times, and I don't think anybody. You're not satisfied with them. I don't think we're satisfied with them. I don't think the public could be happy with them. It's important to say that. We're trying to explore some of the work that's ongoing that will undo that. There's lots of pressures. So you've outlined in detail the work that's ongoing to try and resolve particularly long stays at hospitals, which is impacting response times. What additional, in terms of the structures and the different scenarios, is there additional resource required to carry out some of those scenarios, and what is it?
Yeah, so we have had some additionality, as I highlighted. So we've had 100 total between paramedics and what we call emergency medical technicians. So we had some additionality. What we are working through with an external company is a demand and capacity review. So they're taking a data-driven approach. They take several years of our data and build a 10-year projected model. And then what we are doing is building into that model all the different variables which we can influence. And I guess there's obviously variables which are going around hospital handover time. And then this builds up an evidence base of developments which we could propose, we can implement, which is going to drive down response times. I guess layered into all the pieces I've spoken around before, around treating more patients in the community, taking less patients to the ED, elements around internal efficiencies if we were to change rosters, etc., etc. So that is the sort of complex picture which we're just in the final stages of finishing just now, and next month we should have a final picture around that. I don't think there's an overnight solution. Obviously, we need to make sure that we are as efficient as possible as a baseline, and then as innovative and transformational as possible with everything we can do to bring down our response time to make sure that we're close to targets and comparable to UK trusts and what's acceptable to us, yourselves and patients.
Okay. So you had said when you were first talking about the additional 50 paramedics and the additional 50 technicians.
Yeah.
So that isn't an overnight. That obviously there's a lengthy period for those to be trained and operational. That's above what the current training intake would be. That 100 is additional. Okay, fair enough. Colin?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation and the work you do. If the ambulance service was a body, what we do is we tie your hands, we tie your feet, and we ask you to run a race. And I think what you've managed to do in that scenario is phenomenal. And everything is interconnected. If you're stuck outside a hospital, then you can't respond to calls, so your response times are going to go down. If you're responding late to people that are sick, then you're arriving with them, and that late and that delay means that they're sicker in some instances, which means that whenever they get to the back up to the hospital, they then go in and need more treatment, which means that they cause more of a delay going through the emergency department, which means that they have a longer stay in the hospital to treat all of the subsequent issues. Whereas had we had a service that was able to respond to them in the first instance, they wouldn't need much of the treatment that was there, and that's all traceable. Whilst there are differences to the London model that you've highlighted, one of the most significant differences to the London model is that they've slashed their Category 2 response times, and we haven't. Ours are going up. Our response times are getting worse, which means that we're taking longer to respond to people. And any time that we've met paramedics and other staff, I just think of them, and I know some of them personally as friends, and they tell me that to go to a shift where you drive to a hospital, get into the back of an ambulance, spend your entire shift in the back of an ambulance, and then get out and go home again. I just think of the amount of public purse that we've invested in them and their skills. And quite often as well, paramedics are regularly turning up to duty, getting into an ambulance, going to the first call, and spent the rest of the day at a hospital. So that depletion of the ability to use their skills is also having an effect. So the entire system does need something within the ambulance service. The entire process is something that needs to be addressed. I think that and I have asked for the W45, the London model, even a version of it. If we even just took cohorting, if we just took a space and said we've got 6 ambulances, let's take the paramedics out of ambulance number 1 and number 2 and give them the 6 patients to look after, but let those other 4 ambulances get back out on the road. That would allow a more responsive system. It would allow people to be geographically properly placed. They wouldn't be having to do long drives. There are things that can be done. And I know that you've mentioned that there are connections with SPPG. I met with SPPG last week, and I think from what I got from it, they're hoping that the hospital-at-home model is going to mean that there's going to be hundreds of empty beds available next winter, that everybody's going to move through the system, and then there won't be ambulances outside the door. I worry that all of the eggs are going into the one basket there in order to resolve that. And maybe, rather than going to specific with a question, because, number one, I've been to London, I've seen the system working, I've met with yourselves, we've had a debate in the Chamber. The motion that I put down was amended so that it was effectively useless, so therefore it wasn't being adopted because it asked us to look at everything bar paint in the hospitals before we would actually address the issues of the ambulance service. But what I would just make a recommendation is if we could ask SPPG to come in, if the committee agreed to ask them about how they are preparing for winter next year, because we need to know that next year we don't go into this, because if we end up 6 and 7. I think there was it one day over the Christmas holidays we had 50-something of the 50-something available ambulances stuck outside hospitals. We are, and this building here, Fire and Rescue Service, imagine if we ended up with a car crash on the motorway, 3 or 4 car pile-up. We would just simply have an emergency service that wouldn't be able to respond to it. That's how serious it gets in the winter time. So hopefully we'll get that report. But thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the work that you did. Thank you.
We have
we got them coming
3rd of July.
3rd of July. Excellent. Okay. I think there's another meeting to go in that series as well of prep meetings.
If I could just add, Colin, thank you very much for your comments, and I guess just to come back, and the health and well-being of our staff is really pivotal to us, and really important, a factor that we need to consider within all of this, around from everything from their satisfaction at work, their ability to treat patients that they're trained to do and have spent a lot of time training to do, right through to attrition rates, leaving rates, attracting people to the trust, etc. So it's a really complex problem with multiple layers. Thank you.
Okay, can I have a quick... Fair enough. Just in terms of the community resuscitation strategy, I don't know if you can provide an update on where that is. Just for background, we obviously met with the Fire and Rescue Service, and Danny had asked a question about Maggie's Law, so it kind of feeds into that.
Yeah, so I can certainly give you an update around our community resuscitation team. So we have the team up to establishment. There's been a bit of a recruitment issue over the last couple of years, but we have the team up to full establishment, and they are training up to 100 new community first responders a year, as well as maintaining the existing teams that we have. I think we have over 500 community first responders now who can respond on our behalf. It's Dr Riddle, the medical director, who's been the direct liaison with the fire service around Maggie's Call, but I know communication and engagement is ongoing in terms of how we do that co-responding model. And we're sort of almost ready and waiting to start to roll out any training that's required, and absolutely engaged that as soon as we can roll that model out across the region, that we're absolutely engaged to do that.
Sure. Can I maybe just add, Chair, if I may, that I've had the privilege of meeting Maggie's family, and I know that our Chair and our Chief Executive have met on a number of occasions now with Sheila, and as Neil has said, we are utterly compelled, having heard that story, to do whatever we can to support the fire service and that co-responding model. So yes, as Neil said, we are ready and waiting whenever we know there were some challenges around the fire service in terms of the implementation of that model, but certainly we're very supportive of it, and indeed have been engaged as well around potentially looking at, is there other opportunities, for example falls, etc. as well.
And if I could just add, Chair, I guess that is the sharper end, if I can call it, of our clinical strategy around, obviously the response time is important, but we have a new reframed focus on, I guess, an improvement plan around all cardiac arrests, and ensuring that we're obviously looking at response times, but we're also, in the last year, really reframed how we're looking at outcomes and benchmarking ourselves across the UK and wider to ensure that we're delivering the best care for the sickest patients, and really focusing on that.
Okay, good stuff. Arlia?
Yes, just two quick questions, Chair. So to follow on to agree with Colin, I know we'll have the SPPG in, but just to come back to that issue around the London model and if it can be applied here, and just as you were saying earlier, then they're obviously undertaking a bit of work to see within our landscape if even parts of it or whatever, as Colin was saying, can be applied here. But if not, why not? Has the SPPG give a timeline in terms of when they're going to come back with that piece of work completed, do you know?
No, we don't have a definitive timeline, but we do have an assurance from them that there are ongoing discussions in that regard. I have to say we were also very encouraged by the new incoming Permanent Secretary who came to meet with the Trust Board, and their, I suppose, assurance that ambulance handovers is a priority. So we don't have a definitive time frame yet, but we are hoping that certainly we're coming upon winter. So obviously, and as Colin and some of the other members have pointed out, our ambulance handover delays are deteriorating as opposed to improving, and have been year on year collectively. And Q3 of last year was the worst on record by far. And we've already said at the outset of the presentation that there are individuals who have been very much impacted by that. And so we're keen to obviously avoid a reoccurrence of that situation. The problem for us as an ambulance service is that when trusts are in extremis, that's when we're in extremis as well. And what is more challenging is when all trusts are experiencing significant challenges, there is nowhere really to go to try and relieve some of the pressures. So there's a number of challenges there, but we don't have a definitive time frame, but we do have an assurance that that's being actively explored currently.
No, that's good. And see the meeting that the Permanent Secretary then done recently, was that with yourselves and the Trust? Sorry,
yes, he came to visit us in the Trust Board.
Very good. And I'm just thinking, because obviously it mentioned there about one of the biggest pressures in terms of the social care and the care packages and trying to get people filtered back out of the hospital. And I know that the department previously have presented to us and have given us, there is a team of people that are constantly trying to look at initiatives that they can try and roll out to try and increase those care packages and get people out more swiftly. I'm assuming that was raised at the meeting with the Permanent Secretary then, and that would be high up on his agenda?
Absolutely. I have to say that the Permanent Secretary certainly gave a very compelling understanding or account of this understanding of the situation in Northern Ireland when he met with us. The other thing I would say is that the work that the CMO and the CNO are leading is really in that space in terms of the discharge and the challenge with the discharge and trying to do, and for us as an organisation, avoiding bringing people to hospital who go down a pathway, as Colin has described, whereby then the length of stay is extended, etc. So we have our part to play in that too. But certainly the work that's being focused on around that huge regional focus is about delayed discharges, complex discharges. How can we do differently? How can we understand frailty in terms of who is frail? How can we avoid frail elderly coming to hospital? All of those things, because one of the things that we know is that for those who wait greater than 2 hours in the back of an ambulance for an ambulance handover, 40% consistently are over 80 and about 12% are over 90. So you've described, the longer you wait, then you can potentially extend your length of stay. We want to bring those individuals to the correct place, deliver their care in the right place, so that we avoid those lengths of stays that lead to complex discharge, because obviously individuals can lose their functionality and then they require more care at discharge than they may have done if they'd had a pathway that was more appropriate. So that's the work that is happening through the CMO and CNO, and I can say to you that my understanding is that the Permanent Secretary will be chairing the steering group for that particular work, and that all of the work streams that we're involved in and other trusts are very actively engaged in will be feeding through to that steering group.
Very
so
good.
There seems to be certainly a commitment there.
That's really good to know. And in the last conversation with the Fire Service, we touched on some of the cross-border cooperation between the two agencies, North and South. And I'm just wondering then, obviously, in your own context, if there is any coordination that currently exists North and South. And particularly I'm thinking about the border areas and how that might help ease some of the pressures that we might be feeling up north more so. Is there a programme of work in place in there? How you try and respond and sort of help one another?
So there's daily practice of National Ambulance Service and NIAS helping each other out across cross-border areas for emergency calls, and I believe there's some ongoing discussions around, I guess on the back of the Creeslock incident, around what all-island specialist response would look like. I think that's just an early discussion phase. Okay,
very good. And just finally from me, you had touched earlier in your remarks around the Hear and Treat service, so I know we've heard a lot about that, but I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can try and provide more reassurance to our constituents, because it's it seems like a brilliant initiative, but it's trying to instill that bit of confidence in the public that whenever they pick up the phone, that clinically it's as safe as being, brought down to an emergency department. Just if you have any comments on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I guess this is all part of the evolving role of paramedics. As I was alluding to across my career, it's changed, and I guess we can give assurance that it is safe as the profession develops, that is the different pathways that we will take. There probably is some comms that we need to wrap around that to get out to the public that the historic ways of a phone call, an ambulance and hospital now has many different layers and pathways to it. But be happy to look at and pick something up around that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Neil, Lynn, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you all
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, members, we have, we're going to just move everything that we have now to next week, if everybody's content with that, and we're going to do it even if you're not content with that. The only thing then that I have to do is just say date, time and place of next meeting, which is next Thursday, 15th of May, room 29, 2 p.m. Shanawal.
Yeah.